Putting nature at the heart of sustainable development. It's a mission, it's a hope, it's the title of this session. Hello, everybody, welcome. I am Femi Oke. I'm your MC for this session for about the next 90 minutes. Let me tell you what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at the transforming nature of development. We're going to be looking at data and how that is going to help us do that. We're also going to be looking at nature positive development plans. So a lot to do. We have some stunning videos, some very special people joining us as well, experts, thought leaders, and you, of course. Thank you for watching. So let us get started. Goodwill ambassadors, over to you.
Throughout time, the planet has shaped all life.
The planet has shaped all life.
The planet has shaped all life.
But now, in the era of the human, we are shaping the planet.
And truthfully, we are not doing a good job at it yet. Our actions are putting a lot of pressure on the world. Just look at 2020 with COVID-19, extreme weather, and rampant wildfires. People have created this mess, but we can fix it.
Empowered people can become agents of their own destiny. The world may seem stuck in its own ways, but we can take actions to create a new normal, whether that's expanding the role of women in society or using cleaner energy.
In too many countries, fossil fuels remain the primary source of energy, but clean alternatives like solar power will help reduce our carbon emissions. These alternatives need to be made accessible and affordable without using too much of other finite resources.
And we must learn to harness the power of nature at the same time as we protect its beauty and wonder. Moving to protect, sustainably manage and restore ecosystems in a way that promotes well-being.
Too often, the decisions of a few people or countries hurt the most vulnerable people across the world. For all of us to flourish now and into the future, we must understand that we are all connected. The choices you make impact the whole world around you.
Shaping the planet means
Taking bold steps.
Bold steps for humans to survive and thrive in this new era.
If we are going to change the world,
we need you.
We need you.
We need you, our global leaders, to take bold action now.
So last year, I hosted the virtual launch of the Human Development Report 2020. It is still online. I highly recommend you read it. I'm just clicking on it right now. The Next Frontier, Human Development and the Anthropocene is the name of that particular report. Excellent read, but I have a confession to make. I had to look up Anthropocene before I could actually host the event. So now I know it is the current geological age that we are living in that has been most impacted by our human activity concerning climate and the environment. Coming up, we have the director of the Human Development Report Office, Pedro Conceição. He will tell you much more about the report. But first, we sent the UNDP film crew out and about to ask people, what is the Anthropocene?
Anthropocene.
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 Anthropocene. Giorgio, help me.
Do I have to pronounce it correctly?
Some of this is something medical.
Something to do with old.
I think that's to do with climate change.
So something to do with people?
Anthro means man, right? Or human man?
I don't know the meaning of that word.
Oh, the Anthropocene. Yes, I know what that word means.
Can I get a hint?
The current geological age, viewed as the
Period during which human activity has been dominant influence on climate and environment.
I think it means that the environment and it's been damaged.
Oh, we're in the Anthropocene. Current geological age. I should have known that.
Man, that's such a good word for right now, dude.
As I record this message, our lives continue to be conditioned by COVID-19. But COVID-19 is also a window into a new reality of a dangerous planetary change. New because for the first time in our history, our actions, human actions, are driving processes of unprecedented change at the planetary scales. Climate change is an example. And so is the increase in the frequency of new and re-emerging diseases that jump from animals to humans, of which COVID-19 may be the latest example. And they are directly related, we know, to pressures that we're putting on biodiversity. This new reality has sometimes been described as a new geological epoch or event, given the unprecedented magnitude of the responsibility of human choices in driving a range of dangerous changes in our planetary processes. And in a tragic twist, this is also an era of inequalities. Inequalities in the contributions that different people make to these processes of planetary change, and inequalities in the asymmetries in suffering the consequences from these processes. And the tragic twist is that those that have contributed the least are often those that suffer more from these processes of dangerous planetary change. So this is where we are, but the way forward is up to us to define. And one of the important things to consider is to stop looking at nature as a constraint, something that stands in the way of progress, but really the very foundation of our existence and an opportunity to actually enhance human flourishing. So whether we think about investing in green spaces in cities that will help people to cope better with the heat waves, or protecting tropical forests that will help to mitigate climate change, or preserving marine ecosystems that can help the potential of the blue economy in many parts of the world. Investing in nature is an opportunity also to advance human development and to enhance human flourishing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. The Prime Minister of Barbados is not just the leader of a Caribbean nation. She is one of the foremost leaders as far as climate crisis policy is concerned. She joins us now to talk about some of the biggest problems that we are facing. Prime Minister Motley, good to see you. Over to you.
We live at a time when in the last decade we've seen a global financial crisis, we've seen the rise of inequality, we've seen the climate crisis, and now we have this awful pandemic. Since the first report in 1990, when it pioneered the Human Development Index, this report has sought to shift the focus of development economics from the narrow lens of cold statistics on economic growth to the broader sweep of policies with people at its center. The Human Development Report has long cautioned against the slavish adherence to the GDP per capita criterion as a reliable measure of development. This latest report, my friends, which we launched today, continues in that fine, thought-provoking tradition. The choice of theme, human development and the Anthropocene, could hardly have been more apt or more relevant. None of us can deny that 2020 has been a cataclysmic year of extraordinary devastation. Unprecedented floods, drought, wildfires, hurricanes, and record-breaking temperatures, and now indeed this pandemic of biblical proportions. We cannot find in living memory a more stark illustration of the impact of human activity on the Earth's ecosystems, a more vivid red flag on the dangerous and growing imbalance between people and planet. The level of scientific knowledge freely communicated throughout our interconnected societies shows us without equivocation that human activity is endangering our planet and threatening the quality of life and eventual survival of future generations. I am convinced, my friends, that we can find the will and the capacity to implement policies that strike a sustainable balance between humanity and the planet, a balance that aims to redress social and economic inequalities between and within states, incentivizes behavioral change towards positive environmental stewardship, seeks to fight the next slow-motion pandemic of antimicrobial resistance from now rather than waiting till when it becomes the largest killer of human beings in 2050. Finances green transitions and inculcates values of caring and community within our societies. There is one thing I am absolutely certain of, which gives me hope and confidence every day. Either my generation is now prepared to lead as responsible adults, or young children like the ones I've been showing off recently in my own country will become the committed brigade of young activists waiting in the wings, and they will step up and do it for us. It is up to us whether we truly make what is potentially the worst of times the best of times by choosing the right thing to do and by choosing to live differently. I thank you.
Such a direct challenge for all of us, choosing to live differently. Thank you, Prime Minister Motley. Part of the genius of the Human Development Report is that it offers problems and highlights the problems, I should say, and then offers solutions as well. Let's take a look at some of the essential transformations that have to happen if we really are going to put nature at the center of development.
We are all dependent on the natural world. Every breath of air we take, every mouthful of food we eat, depends upon a healthy natural world. We have no alternative but to try and work in harmony with the natural world. If we ignore its requirements, if we tread roughshod over it, if we simply destroy it when it gets in our way, we will pay the price. Some might say we are already paying the price. Now is the time to make amends, and now is the time to listen to our conscience.
Who is going to argue with Sir David Attenborough? Not me. Is Sir David says it's time. It's time. Transformation is really hard to happen without political will, which is why we're so glad to have governments as part of this session.
It was under the service of His Majesty the Great Fourth King and under his political will and guidance that we were able to do many things which has taken us on this wonderful journey till today, where Bhutan is one of the leaders in this world in environmental conservation. To begin with, in the early 70s, we stopped all our forestry activities. No more destroying our forests. His Majesty said we must take stock of our forests. We must not destroy our nature, and we must look after our country so that in the future our children will be able to enjoy the beauty of this country. The Bhutan Trust Fund was set up in the early 90s with the help of many development partners. It was the first trust fund of its kind in the world. This has also helped to finance many of our conservation projects and support them. Gross national happiness. This wonderful saying which His Majesty the Fourth King said when he was a young man. He propagated that he was going to bring wealth and development to this country and change. But with this newfound wealth and change, we must not lose sight of our natural values, our value systems, our respect for our teachers, for our elders, for our parents, for our religion and culture. For if we were to lose that, no amount of money in this world could buy it back for us. These are all principles which guided us on our environmental journey. Nature in Bhutan is not the responsibility of any one agency or any one person. The Article 5 of the Constitution of Bhutan demands that every citizen is a role player and a custodian of our natural environment. And it is this which we are trying to propagate. Various civil society organizations have cropped up. The Royal Society for Protection of Nature, the Ecological Society, the BirdLife Society of Bhutan, doing wonderful work. Today, climate change plays a very important role in Bhutan. We have to adapt to changing ways. The glacial lakes are melting faster than ever and posing great threat downstream. We have unusual weather patterns affecting farmers and crops. Wildlife depredation on livestock at an unprecedented rate than we've ever had before. This human-wildlife conflict is another one we're having a difficult time in coming to terms with, in balancing it. So innovative mechanisms now have to be developed so that the farmers and the livestock owners do not suffer great economic disasters so that they go out of business. I hope that the international community will come out and help Bhutan so that we can continue this wonderful environmental journey and conservation to be an example to the world and keep our nature pure and unadulterated. For this, we need your help.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be part of this year's Nature for Life Hub, advocating for the restoration of nature and calling on governments to put nature at the heart of sustainable development. Global biodiversity loss is threatening the security of the world's food supplies and the livelihoods of millions of people, including indigenous people and local communities, most especially in the African region. It is my hope that this event would further channel global attention to call for urgent action on biodiversity loss. The 2019 Global Assessment Report of IPBES clearly indicates that the current negative trends in biodiversity and ecosystem will undermine our progress towards attaining 80% of our SDG targets related to water, cities, health, climate, oceans, land, and hunger. The linkages between climate change and biodiversity loss have been clearly established by all scientific bodies. Individually and in combination, they aggravate poverty, inequalities, and food insecurity. Natural ecosystems play a crucial role in the sequestration of carbon to reduce greenhouse gases. When human activities degrade or destroy habitats, they jeopardize the role these play in carbon sequestration and can cause affected ecosystems to switch from carbon sinks to carbon sources in just a few years. But the good news is that it's not too late to reverse the current trends if conservation efforts are scaled up and protected areas are expanded. Protected areas are the cornerstone of biodiversity and conservation. Nigeria is committed to tackling and reversing biodiversity loss and mitigating climate change. Our President Buhari endorsed the Leaders' Pledge for Nature, a commitment to urgent and transformational actions to address biodiversity loss, safeguard our planetary safety net, and ensure we build forward better towards net positive outcomes for nature, climate, and sustainable development. Nigeria also joined the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People and the Global Ocean Alliance, which calls for the protection of at least 30% of the world's land and sea by 2030, with the aim of halting the accelerating loss of species and protecting vital ecosystems that are the source of our economic security. We are demonstrating these commitments by championing the High Ambition Coalition and the Global Ocean Alliance initiative in the West African region. by inviting other nations to join and sign up with us in calling for 30% protection. Nigeria also established 10 additional national parks, bringing our total number of national parks to 17, and 2 of these will be designated marine protected areas. Dear participants, we must act swiftly and boldly to reverse the loss of nature by working together to continue ensuring the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of our biodiversity. Also integrating nature into our sectorial plans and policies, eliminating harmful investments, and aligning financial flows to the SDGs, as well as financing the needed transformation to deliver urgently needed solutions to climate change. As protecting, restoring, and sustainably managing the world's ecosystem could provide more than a third of our climate mitigation solutions. I thank the UNDP for recognizing the importance and urgency required to address the biodiversity loss crisis by organizing this event. May we continue to work together and strive to live in harmony with nature. Thank you for your kind attention.
In the next part of our session, we are going to look at some of the challenges that countries are facing to put nature at the heart of development and the strategies and tools that they are using. First, the challenges. Let's take a look.
We love and enjoy nature, use it and trade it, but we don't really understand nature's real value, nor how it is central to development, or that investment in biodiversity should be considered as development and growth.
Надо сказать, что сохранение биоразнообразия вот на такой большой территории Казахстана это также является одной из ключевых проблем и ключевых вызовов принципов устойчивого развития.
In fact, biodiversity has to be a cross-cutting issue, a platform upon which you can deliver a wide range of benefits, social, cultural, economical, and even for peace-building processes.
People think it's just nature-given resource and therefore it can be depleted. They don't know the cost benefits in both case scenario, whether the ecological integrity or the economic development.
Es necesario crear conciencia a todos los niveles y sobre todo instituciones y organizaciones que reconozcan la naturaleza como parte del desarrollo sostenible.
Creo que es necesario seguir haciendo los esfuerzos por valorar la naturaleza y sus bienes y sus servicios ecosistémicos, los cuales son fundamentales para el desarrollo y para el bienestar de las personas, y que la toma de decisiones y el conjunto de políticas tiene que estar en función de esa importancia.
We also need to create awareness, generate data through, of course, having spatial data and formulation of databases that can provide us with areas that we can identify and prioritize for policymakers to ensure that nature-based actions are delivered vis-a-vis the suited national priorities.
Una de las principales bases para el desarrollo del país es contar con estadísticas y datos confiables que permitan una buena toma de decisión.
Donc, on est conscient en Haïti qu'il y a une grande nécessité de produire des données, de mettre à jour des données, mais aussi de permettre aux utilisateurs des données de renforcer leur capacité à utiliser des données pour prendre les meilleures décisions.
Es necesario aumentar nuestra capacidad de generar datos, de generar información que se encuentra a disposición de todos a través de varios medios de difusión.
More work is needed to map ecological infrastructure comprehensively across the country, so that we can turn these policies and strategies into management plans that are implemented across sectors in a coordinated way.
Uno de los elementos importantes para esto es poder ordenar el uso del territorio, la gestión integrada de los recursos naturales, ya sobre la base de conocimiento científico, pero también con el conocimiento tradicional, con el conocimiento ancestral, que creo que también es un activo que debe ser revalorado, ¿no? Y está muy vinculado a la naturaleza misma.
We need to manage our data to produce useful information so that the decision maker can guide us
Bueno, yo creo que lo primero que estamos haciendo es la difusión, o sea, es dar a conocer tanto a la población como a los tomadores de decisiones a nivel subnacional, por ejemplo, la importancia de incorporar la biodiversidad en la toma de decisiones, en la planificación.
There is a challenge in securing and sustaining investments in nature. There is lack of acknowledgement across most sectors that a healthy natural environment is key to the achievement of all sustainable development goals.
Another priority that Costa Rica has to work even more, we are doing it very well right now, this is working as a high performance team between science, government, and private sector to come with more answers to the questions we are facing right now.
Yo sí creo que, si bien queda claro de la relación con los medios de vida y el uso de los recursos o de la naturaleza como tal, creo que hay un ejercicio pendiente que es poner en agenda lo que manifestaba este activo, ponerlo en agenda, la agenda política o la agenda de decisión sobre la asignación propia o la toma de decisiones sobre cómo gestionar estos recursos.
Hay que tomar acciones que vayan y trasciendan más allá de la creación de conciencia, que vayan al nivel de toma de decisiones importantes.
Bueno, yo considero que en general todos los países experimentan el mismo desafío. Ecuador no es una excepción, en el sentido de poder equilibrar el crecimiento económico con el cuidado del medio ambiente y el bienestar social y la acción climática.
We also need to learn from 2020. Human well-being and nature well-being are interlinked, and the faster we understand that, the faster we can think in the kind of development we need for the coming years.
Entonces, tenemos el reto, pero creo que estamos preparados para poder enfrentar y poner a la naturaleza, continuar poniendo a la naturaleza en el centro, ¿no?, del desarrollo.
AI, artificial intelligence, can be used to save our Earth. Amazing! Here's Microsoft's planetary computer.
Imagine if we had a planetary computer that could tell us exactly what we needed to do to protect planet Earth. A system that was capable of providing us information about every tree, every species, all of our natural resources. How could we use all of that data to build a better world? Planetary scale innovation is needed now more than ever. Because if we truly care about each other, then we have got to care about this planet that we all call home. And that is something that we have been failing at for far too long. Consider this. In the time since I've been alive, the human population has almost doubled. Our species now uses more than 70% of all land on Earth to provide our food, our fiber, our water, minerals, and our energy. And these activities are fundamentally transforming the natural systems we all depend on. Species are going extinct tens to hundreds of times faster than they have before. And we're changing our climate systems in ways that could have catastrophic impacts. No matter how you view it, we're now facing one of the most existential challenges our species has ever had to think about. We have to somehow figure out how to mitigate and adapt to rapidly changing climates, ensure resilient water supplies, sustainably feed a human population rapidly growing to 10 billion, all while stemming a global and catastrophic loss of biodiversity. We may know how fast species are going extinct, but we don't actually know how many species there are or how many trees there are. We're facing our last real opportunity to ask ourselves the most fundamental of questions. How are we going to solve these planetary scale challenges? Those opportunities are what have motivated us to start laying the foundations for what I've come to think of as the world's first planetary computer. We're talking about an AI-driven platform that puts the full power of Earth-scale data right at people's fingertips, allowing them to come together and solve some of the greatest environmental and sustainability challenges we face today. Sure, it's an ambitious idea, but its promise is unprecedented. For the first time, we'd be able to fully understand what resources are where, how fast they're being depleted, and more importantly, what could and should we be doing with all of our natural resources. But this won't be built as a crystal ball. Instead, it will be a global portfolio of applications, connecting trillions of data points to computing power and machine learning capable of converting that all into contextualized information. This is what Microsoft is innovating towards, what we're working with partners all around the world to help scale. The bottom line is, if we want to live on a healthy planet that provides a prosperous future for us all, then we need to know what it's made up of and what it's capable of.
Data as an integrator in national development is a panel conversation hosted by the UNDP Administrator, Achim Steiner. It's going to be good because he's the boss. Achim, over to you.
Hello and welcome to a discussion with two very eminent and extremely interesting colleagues that I have the pleasure of introducing this afternoon. It is about data, about spatial data, and the UN Biodiversity Lab 2.0. Let me briefly welcome, first of all, Brad Smith, the President of Microsoft, and Inger Andersen, Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme. We are talking about this partnership between UNDP, UNEP, and Microsoft because it is a spatial data portal that is powered by Microsoft's planetary computer. And with that, Brad, if I may throw the ball over to you, and perhaps you could say a couple of words about what is the planetary computer and why is Microsoft building it? And what was your vision also when you first started? And we now find ourselves in this unique opportunity of working together in the United Nations family and with you and Microsoft.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to be here with both of you because this work, I do believe, is so important. 2 years ago or so, Microsoft's Environmental Sustainability Group really conceived and launched this planetary computer. And what it really is a global geospatial data set. Well, what is a geospatial data set? Think of it as a data set that provides a map of the world down to a 10-meter resolution of a series of overlays. It captures satellite imagery of the entire planet. It captures, say, climate forecasts. It captures local biodiversity data about the water, the natural resources in a location. And it can all be put to use by scientists around the world with the help of machine learning that is part of the planetary computer as well. And then when you really think about why we would do that, well, it's obvious. I think it's so we can manage the world's biodiversity based on better data to understand it. And then how do we make this a success? Well, in part, this points to, I think, the critical partnership we're talking about here.
Thank you very much, Brad and Inger. What does the UN Biodiversity Lab then do with this extraordinary power of computing, of analyzing data, and what problems are we actually trying to solve by having that lab?
Well, I mean, it's a really exciting collaboration here. And obviously, we know from just our daily lives that nature is no longer working. And so now we are in the middle of negotiating a new framework. It's sort of the COP21 for biodiversity. Biodiversity people would not like me saying that, but everybody heard about COP21, so I'm doing it anyway. This is COP15, where we're going to agree these big agreements on a number of issues. And so having this data will matter.
And just to add, I think one of the, for me, also very exciting possibilities that, the last 10, 20 years, we have been creating more and more data sets across the world. But, it doesn't make it easier necessarily either for a land use planner or for a government, a parliament, a citizen, an NGO, or a scientist for that matter to gain access. And one of the wonderful things I think that I see in the UN Biodiversity Lab is that it now literally provides access to more than 400 spatial data sets across biodiversity, climate change, development. And I think this is a unique service because you can literally go into it now, as I understand, and get spatial metrics for just about any place on Earth. And just imagine what an extraordinary breakthrough this is in terms of what you just described, Inge, when decisions have to be made. And Brad, to your point of how one connects knowledge, begins to also be able to leverage artificial intelligence, i.e. that digital universe that suddenly connects to the most fundamental forms of life. And I wanted to come back to Brad and say, what made you, in a sense, invest and believe and contribute to making this partnership between Microsoft and our two UN organizations become something that became a priority for you?
I think it was really two things. One is something that is sort of commonplace and almost common sense for people who work in business like I do, which is that fundamentally you cannot manage what you cannot measure. But there's a second piece as well, and this is the connection. I just think that the UN Biodiversity Lab is of just fundamental importance. I mean, what the UNEP and what UNDP have the opportunity to do together is bring the data and the insights and the science and then the public policy, so that this is an effective tool that will guide policy, shape policy, and then I hope, help the world hold itself accountable, help governments hold themselves accountable. And I just think that is a uniquely important role that needs to be advanced in all this.
Well, I think Inge would probably echo this, but from the vantage point of UNEP, I mean, how would you describe the inherent logic that I think we're all building on in this UN Biodiversity Lab in coming together?
No, I mean, it's very, very fortuitous because we get the UNDP, which has the boots on the ground, which has masses of real connections at the country level, has this comprehensive presence, and of course we get state of the art from our friends at Microsoft, and that coming together. For us, we're building the World Environment Situation Room, as you know, that takes all of this data from the various data sets. But environmental data is often in big data sets managed here and there. So making that available through this collaboration is really quite magnificent. And here I will say that I really acknowledge Microsoft's progressive moves on sustainability with the planetary computer, and really is an example of how science and data and development and environmental knowledge can work together.
The other thing I would just say that I think really builds on that is, the good news is there is a lot of data. We're no longer, in a proverbial data desert. Maybe we're now trying to make our way through a data jungle. There's so much data all around us. But interestingly, that creates challenges of its own. And then the one other thing I think that is always relevant here is that we constantly need to invest in helping people acquire the skills needed to put all of this to work. This is true for literally every government on the planet. It's true for every business on the planet.
We have this oceans of data, but drops of information, right? And so how do we put this data together and get intel out of it that we can plan for it? And I think that is the next step. And that is exactly what we need to now. We need to get much smarter analytics and understanding that it's not just the environmental data, because that's fine and dandy and that's hard enough. But then we need to overlay it with diseases and with understanding of economic growth and with drivers of growth or barriers to growth, etc., to really unlock the development potential of what this data holds and the sustainability development goal potential.
I think from my perspective, it's the empowerment of people to actually have access to data. There's a degree of democratization also of information. There used to be a time when there were very few people who had access to a great deal of data and the majority did not. We live in an age where I think access to data, and particularly in the way that the Biodiversity Lab, I think, is also linking it to spatial dimensions. People in the end live in places. They decide what happens on a piece of land or on a piece of coastline or in the oceans. And this wonderful opportunity, I think, that we are able to create together and with many, many partners. And so in that spirit, I just want to join both you, Inge, and Brad, and say, great partnership. I think we have already learned a lot. Hopefully, with Moore's Law, we will also see the equivalent that with every 6 months that pass, We will see a doubling of the users that are out there, and above all, the impact on the ground. So I think with that, to all of you who are watching, from the three of us, please use the UN Biodiversity Lab, and let's continue to build these kinds of partnerships.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From the streets of New York City to the heart of the Amazon, maps help us understand how our changing planet is affecting our lives. Maps help us see where nature is thriving and where it is being destroyed. Spatial data help decision makers put nature at the heart of sustainable development by helping them identify essential ecosystems that help us secure water, feed more than 7 billion people, avoid natural disasters, keep carbon in the ground, and sustain more than 2 billion livelihoods. We, at the United Nations, together with our partners, are excited to launch the next iteration of the UN Biodiversity Lab. We have updated the UN Biodiversity Lab with new data and new functions to help decision makers put nature at the heart of development. To access more than 400 cutting-edge global datasets, including the world's first 10-meter resolution land cover and land use map. To explore popular data collections that unlock the power of data on key thematic issues and that provide insights on how and where action is needed most. To create a secure workspace where you can upload your own data to generate your own insights on the intersection of nature, climate, and sustainable development. To calculate dynamic indicators such as deforestation, showing the state of the planet at the click of a button. To generate your own powerful maps that can guide local and national action for nature, climate, and sustainable development. Powered by Microsoft's planetary computer and supported by more than 30 data providers, the UN Biodiversity Lab provides novel insight that is essential for putting nature at the heart of sustainable development. Our goal is to enable everyone to harness the power of data, to equip policymakers with powerful tools to make more informed decisions on nature, and to be able to monitor the pulse of our planet. Join us. Start exploring today at unbiodiversitylab.org.
UN Biodiversity Lab empowers decision makers around the globe with the data and tools they need to address critical challenges in biodiversity preservation, climate change, and sustainable development. Impact Observatory is a tech company developing revolutionary AI-powered algorithms and data. As a key technical partner of UN Biodiversity Lab, Impact Observatory powers the platform with open source software and, with our partners Esri and Microsoft, creates automated maps that monitor our changing world at unprecedented scale. Impact Observatory's partnership with UN Biodiversity Lab helps put nature at the heart of development to protect the future of people and the planet.
Hi, this is Eileen Lee, and I lead the Environmental Conservation Program at the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and we're honored to partner with the UN Biodiversity Lab. There's a lot of excitement these days about the potential of nature-based solutions to deliver simultaneously on climate, biodiversity, and sustainable development goals. But there's not enough being done to operationalize that promise. By helping countries map their essential life support areas, UNBL makes it possible to implement nature-based solutions on the ground, guiding development so that it is equitable, nature positive, and climate neutral.
Hello, my name is Cindy Schmidt, and I'm an Associate Program Manager for NASA's Ecological Forecasting Program. Our program focuses on the use of satellite Earth observations for conserving nature, both on land and in the oceans, with a goal of improved decision-making for sustainable ecosystem management. Our program has supported the development and use of the UN Biodiversity Lab to help countries utilize geospatial data for biodiversity reporting and conservation planning. The UN Biodiversity Lab has and will play a crucial role in supporting the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as providing valuable new tools for monitoring ecosystems.
The Protected Planet Initiative is proud to be a partner with UN Biodiversity Lab. Protected and conserved areas are often cited as being the cornerstone of biodiversity conservation globally. Through the Protected Planet Initiative, UNEP WCMC and partners provide the latest data and information on protected and conserved areas to stakeholders worldwide. The UN Biodiversity Lab is a tool for governments and other stakeholders to bring together data from the Protected Planet Initiative and other global, regional, and national sources. This powerful collaboration will enable countries to incorporate spatial biodiversity data into their planning processes to design, implement, and manage policies and plans for biodiversity, climate change, and sustainable development. Together, we can create better outcomes for people and planet.
Hi, this is Carlos Correa, and it's a pleasure to represent UNICC in the launch of UNBL 2.0. So UNICC has been working with other key technical partners alongside with the UNBL team on the implementation of the UNBL platform. And it's with a great sense of accomplishment that we see it being launched and providing key data regarding people and the planet, which we believe that is going to be very important for decision making. And especially now with the current situation, the current planetary situation, which is unprecedented and has been further confirmed by the latest IPCC reports. So UNICC is very proud to be listed as a technical partner for the UNBL platform, since this is aligned to our organization objectives of providing reliable and advanced digital solutions and helping organizations to achieve their SDGs mandates.
We are delighted to partner up with UN Biodiversity Lab that hosts our maps of global areas of importance for conservation, as well as several other interactive maps that can help decision makers at national and international level, planning and evaluating land use strategies and policies, as well as conservation and restoration strategies. We believe EASA, together with UN Biodiversity Lab, can help decision makers through their maps and decision support tools to address all sustainability challenges.
So let's talk about applications of spatial data with some of my favorite experts. We met a little bit earlier to talk about using spatial data for the new Global Biodiversity Framework. Let's meet the panel.
My name is Elizabeth Mrema, Executive Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity Secretariat, playing a global lead role process for the development of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework to its adoption and beyond for its implementation.
Francis Ogwal is my name. I'm a Natural Resources Manager, Biodiversity and Rangelands. I'm a co-chair of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So if you're talking about how are we going to address issues of spatial planning in the framework, I am here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Femi. My name is Corley Pretorius. I'm Deputy Director of UN Environment Program, World Conservation Monitoring Center. It's a mouthful. In short, it's UNEP WCMC. I'm a planner by trainer. I love maps, but in my day job, we make biodiversity data available to decision makers to make sure that they can act on nature.
And Jamie.
Hi, I'm Jamie Irvin. I manage our Nature for Development program at the United Nations Development Program, and my job is to help countries put nature at the heart of sustainable development.
So panel, if this phrase was not already taken, I would say this is the Genius Bar. Welcome to Genius Bar, audience. We have so many great expert guests right here. So spatial data and the new Global Biodiversity Framework, how those two areas, important areas, connect together. So first of all, Elizabeth, you're going to help us just clarify this biodiversity framework, the post-2020 biodiversity framework. What is it?
Good question, Femi. In short, post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework is meant to be a blueprint of action to safeguard, enhance, and ensure fair share distribution of the benefits, and to be able to invest in our life support system. It is going to build upon, replace the past strategic plan, which was 2011-2020, as well as the Aichi biodiversity target, which expired last year, although implementation still continues. I'm sure Francis will talk in detail what is inside, but in short, it is work in progress currently with 4 main goals, 21 concrete action targets with 10 milestones which will lead us to 2030, and we know 2030 is our famous year for reviewing the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals.
Of Elizabeth, you called in Francis for some support, so absolutely, Francis, I'm bringing you in next. You are leading the working group for developing the biodiversity framework. That is a huge endeavor. There are going to be technical tools that you're going to be using. Can you explain how you do that for monitoring and framework, where spatial mapping comes into your work?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I'll just try to be brief but precise when it comes to the spatial planning and how it relates to the post-2020. When you look at goal A, in there are 2 critical elements that you find spatial planning will be very important. We are talking of enhancing the integrity of all ecosystems, but also we are talking about connectivity of natural ecosystems. Now, spatial planning has got a big role it plays in there because you need to have that tool in order to know how to go about that. But when you look at, again, in respect of the targets, and the Secretary has talked about the action targets, target number 1 of the framework itself will so much need spatial planning or spatial tools. It says ensure that all land and sea areas globally are under integrated biodiversity inclusive spatial planning addressing all land use and sea use change. So that is where the tool itself becomes very, very important in the post-2020. So when you're talking about spatial planning, we see it coming very much in the frame of the post-2020.
The UN Environment World Conservation Center, Corley, that there is a pledge that you have made to make the data, biodiversity data, available for everybody, for all society. How are you going to do that? That's the right thing to do, but how are you going to do that? Examples.
Through partnerships and through collaboration. As you can imagine, the scope and the range of data that's required to inform decision-making going forward to support all actors in society is enormous. We have significant experience in capturing data and managing data on biodiversity. For example, the support that we're providing to the CBD, to the Convention on Biological Diversity, but also tracking trade in species, for example, for the CITES Convention. What we also do is that we identify key data sources working with other partners, so not necessarily the ones that we are managing, and making sure that we make this available through decision support tools. Great example is the IBAT tool that we integrated biodiversity assessment tool that we make available to support private sector decision making. But we're also very proud of our partnership with UNDP in making data available through the UN Biodiversity Lab. And then thirdly, we bring together scientists and develop the metrics and measures to track progress. So what does it mean? What does good look like? How do we measure performance? And these are some of the sort of public good, the global public good deliverables that we bring and make available to all parties.
There are so many crises right now. We have a climate crisis. We've got COVID-19 in the middle of a pandemic. There's always this issue about inequality in the world and poverty. This is something that you absolutely acknowledge, Corley. And I'm just wondering, as we bring in Jamie into the conversation, about how nature and our relationship with nature and managing that relationship with nature, how that can help those various different crises. Jenny.
Thanks so much, Femi. Nature underpins our entire world. It's more than half of our global GDP. It's at risk. Our global GDP is at risk from the loss of nature. Nature underpins our water security, our food security, our safety for cities, and more than 2 billion livelihoods. We need to understand how to protect, restore, and sustainably manage nature if we're going to have a future at all. One of the things we're really excited about at UNDP is the UN Biodiversity Lab that helps governments put nature at the heart of their development plans.
Mm-hmm. All right, so this is going to be the hardest question I feel for you, with a time limit. All right, what are your hopes for the future? I'm going to keep it quite focused. I don't want to hear about your retirement plans. I'm talking about sustainability, nature, biodiversity frameworks, spatial mapping, spatial planning. All right, so it's quite focused. Elizabeth, 1 minute.
What I want for the future? First, we need to know that the framework will need all stakeholders for its implementation. But it can't be implemented if data will not be available. Data to inform decision-making, data to inform national policy, and this data need to be accessible, transparent, for it to be able to be used. And we know data is already available there. We are not starting from the scratch. We know it's already available, but it needs to be packaged, streamlined, so that it is available, transparent to the right stakeholder for its use to make decision-making policies moving forward. So we really need to roll up our sleeves and get it done.
Oh, I feel the passion of that hope. I'm behind that hope. Corey, hopes for the future.
Biggest and immediate hope is that the Conference of the Parties, COP15, will adopt a transformative post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So parties, please agree on a big agenda. And then parties, please agree that and make available all the necessary means of implementation. We need capacity building, we need technology transfer, we need technical and scientific cooperation. We need those things. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping for strengthened cooperation and collaboration to implement this fantastic framework. And I hope by 2030, we are well underway on the road to achieving the biodiversity, the 2050 vision of the convention, living in harmony with nature. We need this transformation and we need it accelerated. That's what I'm hoping for.
Francis, I'm looking at you, the face of hope for the future. What are your hopes?
Indeed, the face of the world, you would say, that looking at me and my co-chair, Basil. My hope in the future is to see humanity living in harmony with nature. We should begin doing that now. We should begin doing that tomorrow. You know, we have often thought that we are far away from nature. But if we disconnect, then we shall not be on this planet. And that is why I see that through spatial planning, we can use that information, the tools that is available within that kind of arrangement, really show humanity the trend that is happening to nature and what we need to do. Sometimes pictures, photographs, talk volumes and volumes of people. So if spatial planning can help us, help humanity begin living with nature, I would be so grateful, because that is what is missing. We are too reckless towards nature, and yet without nature we can never exist here. If you follow creation, humanity seems to have come last. Why didn't we come before? So the fact that we came last simply tells you we are dependent on nature. So I want to see humanity living with nature now and in the future. Thank you.
And Jamie.
Thank you. My hope for the future is that every country has the tools and resources they need to create their own map of hope of essential life support areas, to put nature firmly at the heart of everything they do.
Good question. You may have heard about the targets about protecting and conserving land. In the HE system was 17%. Lots of people are talking about 30% now. But what is happening to the rest, to the 70%? And that's what this target is about. It's about knowing where we have development, where we're going to have our cities, where we're going to have productive lands. And all that is based on data. So we're going to need good land cover data, not just for protected area, intact and wild area, but all land, so that people are able to make the right decision about where they want to take their activities. The space, we're talking all about how we're going to be using land and how we're going to be making decisions. We're seeing today that in the absence of those targets, there is an increasing reconversion of land. That's the number one threat to biodiversity identified by the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service. So we're going to need data that is both global in terms of coverage, but also data that is coming from the local level in terms of local use and the local value of the biodiversity of those areas. So there is a whole range of data that are going to be needed, both coming from organizations at the local level to those that are working at the global level. That ideal system is within reach. This is a system where people making decisions about the use of land have access to the data they need to make informed decisions. Everybody want to live in a better future. Everybody want to be fed, have access to water, clean air, protected from severe weather. That's all are things that are within our reach through nature-based solution. So if we provide people with layers of geographic data and spatial data that enable them to make the right decision, where to put a mine that is essential for producing battery for electric cars, where to put protected area in a place that is special and need to be conserved for migratory species. This is not about stopping everything. This is about creating a better future where we can carry a successful and prosperous life for all. And we put the right thing in the right place when we make the right decision at the local level in terms of making trade-offs around the city, but also at the national, regional, and global level. We all know that our goods are coming from different countries. Do we choose to support goods that have a positive impact and those that have a negative impact? All that is informed by good data.
And now let's take a look at a project which is helping countries to create maps of hope. The maps help countries to protect, restore, and sustainably manage nature in order to achieve the SDGs. Let's find out some more.
We are facing a planetary emergency. Ensuring a healthy planet and reimagining development is essential for our very survival. To respond to biodiversity loss, climate change, and rising inequality, we must invest in nature, which underpins the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement. Together, we must create a global safety net by protecting, managing, and restoring our Earth. But where and how? Spatial data or maps can provide us with the answer. Today, we generate more data in the blink of an eye than in most of human history combined. But how do we use this data to address our planet's crisis? UN Biodiversity Lab is a special data platform that gives decision makers the ability to measure the pulse of the Earth, enabling more informed policy decisions. Building off the data available through this platform, UNDP is providing communities and governments with special insights to map areas essential for supporting life. Using cutting-edge science, we work with countries to prioritize and map their goals for biodiversity, for climate, and for sustainable development. The result, a map of hope that shows where to protect, sustainably manage, and restore nature to achieve goals for people and for the planet. By prioritizing where to take action on the ground, Governments are reimagining development and putting nature at the center of decision-making. Colombia is using its map of hope to create a nature-centered water security plan for its central region, directly benefiting more than 15 million people. Costa Rica is using its map of hope to cool its urban areas with trees and to decarbonize the economy by increasing carbon sequestration from nature. Kazakhstan is using its map to scale up protected areas, preserve biodiversity, and ensure the sustainable use of natural resources. Uganda is using its map of hope to inform its 5-year National Development Plan and to prevent future disasters from flooding. And Peru is putting nature at the center of its green recovery from COVID-19 with a focus on indigenous peoples. We have 10 years to invest in nature. What we do now will determine the trajectory for the next decade and the next century. Now is the time to act. Join us as we support governments and communities in using spatial data to reimagine development and to put nature at the heart of sustainable development.
Finally, a focus on nature-positive development. We're going to visit some pilot countries applying the ELSA methodology that you just saw.
Colombia is considered the second most biodiverse country in the world, hosting 10% of the world's species. This biodiversity needs to be recognized and incorporated into development strategies. We already know the benefits of biodiversity for achieving our national sustainable development objectives, but we still need to make biodiversity a central axis of the country's development. We already have important achievements: the reduction of deforestation by 19% in 2019, the implementation of the National Circular Economy Strategy, the filing of the Escazú Agreement in 2020, and in the insurance of the Law 2111 on crimes against natural resources and the environment. However, the country still faces major challenges at a different scales. Deforestation continues in some areas of the country, posing enormous local and interinstitutional challenges. Similarly, the current pattern of natural ecosystem conversion has a legacy of human footprint and ecosystem degradation.
My name is Jose Manuel Ochoa Quintero. I am the head of the Biodiversity Assessment and Monitoring Program at the Natural Resource Research Institute Alexander von Humboldt. Essential life support areas are crucial for Colombia, as they define important zones for biodiversity, climate change, and economic development.
Environmental deterioration in Colombia generates an annual cost equivalent to 3.5% of the country's GDP, especially the loss of key ecosystem services, such as drinking water. This is not only paradoxical but also worrying. Colombia depends on nature for its water. In fact, 70% of our water comes from the páramos, and a third of the population benefits directly from the regulation of water derived from high mountain ecosystems. However, the loss of drinking water and the growing threat posed by climate change could reduce water provision by up to 70% in coming years. The direct benefits of biodiversity in reducing poverty and inequality and contributing to food security are even more relevant after COVID-19. where the country's poverty level increased from 37 to 42%. The use of spatial data in conjunction with the strategic planning approaches represents an opportunity to assess where and how biodiversity can most effectively contribute to SDGs and human well-being. The national level analysis using the ELSA methodology have allowed us to identify priority areas for restoration, conservation, and sustainable use, which facilitates the management of important territories for biodiversity, for climate, and for sustainable development. This methodology can be applied at different scales, as demonstrated by our mapping of nature for water security in the central region in Colombia. This is also key because the challenge of guaranteeing the provision of drinking water, mainly in cities where 83% of the population will live by 2035, implies having a regional perspective that recognizes the flow of benefits from natural areas close to densely populated cities. ELSA facilitates the identification of biological corridors, key conservation areas, watersheds, and agricultural use areas, among others, that should be considered for water security planning, ensuring that ecosystem services and water provision is protected for current and future generations. Beyond the purely biological and ecological information, these integrated mapping approaches allow us to incorporate socioeconomic information as well as connect public policy objectives with concrete actions in the territory. With such an ecologically and culturally heterogeneous country, the ELSA methodology allows us to regionalize the prioritization exercises, where several voices can be heard and consensus can be built based on the best spatial information available. Join us in identifying essential areas for life in Colombia. Nature for Life.
South Africa is an extremely biodiversity-rich country, sporting high levels of endemism, making South Africa a preferred destination for nature-based tourism. South Africa's biodiversity serves as an important foundation for economic growth and sustainable development. The protection and enhancement of environmental assets and natural resources are high on the South African agenda. In stark contrast, however, the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequality are still prominent socio-economic challenges that are faced by the majority of South Africans. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, together with its key partners, has been leading work to harness the positive opportunities provided by biodiversity and natural ecosystems as a catalyst for sustainable development and economic growth.
I am Ayodele Odushola, the resident representative of the United Nations Development Programme South Africa Country Office. The UNDP remains committed to supporting the government and people of South Africa to achieve their national and international development goals, as well as outlined in the National Development Plan and the Medium-Term Strategic Framework. In 2021, we plan to ramp up the global ambition for nature, climate, and energy with the high-level dialogues on energy, the Biodiversity Conference of Parties, and the Climate Change Conference of Parties 26.
The South African National Development Plan, Vision 2030, confirms that national economic growth is dependent on the environmental sustainability of our proposed development path. A growing economy needs secure water sources. South Africa's 22 strategic water source areas cover 10% of the country, but experience over 50% of the country's rainfall. These areas, together with the river systems that deliver water to the economic centers of the country, must be effectively managed and secured to continue and enhance water quantity and quality. Biodiversity must play a role in building South Africa's economy. Sustainable resource use through the wildlife and bioprospecting sectors are being explored through the delineation of and investment into biodiversity economic nodes.
Good day, I'm Deshni Pillay, the Chief Director of Biodiversity Information and Policy Advice at the South African National Biodiversity Institute. In partnership with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment and provincial conservation agencies, we have developed high-quality, reliable spatial data on nature for decision makers. These maps of critical biodiversity areas and ecological infrastructure are helping stakeholders to manage land, rivers, and catchments for sustainable development.
South Africa is one of the global leaders in using spatial mapping to inform land use decision-making across sectors. The ELSA project, which has just been initiated in South Africa, presents an opportunity for the country to use their spatial datasets in order to represent the country's top spatial priority targets. Mapping synergies and conflicts across the different policy priority targets will be important points of departure from which strategic decisions and trade-offs need to be made. Using the spatial data that we are collecting for ELSA, we can further visualize priority ecological infrastructure as well as areas important for ecosystem-based adaptation and for stimulating the biodiversity economy.
Awareness, understanding, and addressing our impacts and dependencies on nature are some of the challenges experienced across all sectors of the South African society. South Africa, however, is one of the mega diverse countries in the world. We love and enjoy nature, use it and trade it, but we don't really understand nature's real value, nor how it is central to development, or that investment in biodiversity should be considered as development and growth.
Armed with our map of hope, we can now collectively make better decisions about how to protect our ecological infrastructure and sustainably manage nature for a thriving biodiversity economy, which are the backbone of the region's economic development opportunities.
Nature is vital to the economy of Cambodia, a country that continues its transitions toward a higher level of development. Since 1990, we have succeeded in having extremely poverty. Our country's rich and diverse nature is a main contributor to this economic growth. Despite this progress, however, many families critically depend on natural resources for food, shelter, and income, exposing them to risks from climate change and biodiversity loss. I am Chupari, Director of the General Directorate of Environmental Knowledge and Information, Ministry of Environment. Cambodia has many essential life support areas upon which the country's economy depends. Identifying and preserving these key ecosystems also help to preserve livelihoods. Armed with our map of hope, we can now collectively make better decisions about how to protect and sustainably manage nature, the backbone of the region's economic development opportunities.
I am Oigamal, Deputy Director General of the General Directorate of Environmental Knowledge and Information, Ministry of Environment. Using integrated land use planning techniques, we are working to alleviate poverty by developing nature-based economy solutions that offer livelihood alternatives to unsustainable logging practice, and fuel wood use in forest area. The Cambodian Ministry of Environment is working with local community, the World Bank, and UNDP to develop integrated land management policies that protect nature in tandem with building local entrepreneurial scale. The opportunities like ecotourism can boost economic prosperity while strengthening protected area management. Non-timber forest products provide another way to sustainably supplement local income, and carbon markets provide alternative financing opportunity while safeguarding nature.
My name is Yuan Lei. I'm the Director of the Department of Geospatial Information Services, Ministry of Environment, Cambodia. We are putting high-quality, reliable data on nature in the hand of decision makers. Maps are helping stakeholders look across Cardamom Mountain, the Lesa landscape, together to more collaboratively decide on how, when, and where we have to act.
To harmonize forest and freshwater protection with development opportunity in the region, we are using spatial data to convince national policymakers, local communities, land managers, and scientists. They are helping us to develop a map of hubs using the ELSA methodology that puts nature at the heart of sustainable development for economic prosperity, climate resilience. Using spatial data that we are collecting for ELSA, we can visualize conservation corridor, proximity to villages, key biodiversity areas, community fisheries, and freshwater reservoirs. We can then identify areas that are more suitable for nature-based economic development and areas which can support local livelihoods now and in the future. This type of integrated land use planning is helping us build the type of economic safety net that many rural Cambodians need. They are securing nature-based livelihood. In this way, the ELSA project is providing us with data that is improving how we make decisions about land use, and also providing a baseline for our national environmental data management information system.
Join us to map nature for economic prosperity. Join us to map hope so that no one is left behind.
So what's next in using spatial data and development? Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked. We also asked leading experts, and this is what they told us.
Entonces, yo creo que es importante todo el trabajo científico, traducir este trabajo científico, la información a los tomadores de decisiones, pero también es importante traducirlo para todo ciudadano, ¿no? Y principalmente donde vamos a tomar esas decisiones.
Reimagining the protected areas, the biodiversity economy, and the development of an overarching policy process on conservation and sustainable use towards a new deal for people and nature are some of the tangible initiatives presently underway to address the challenges experienced by South Africans.
We are inspired by the use of spatial data for nature, people, and development.
And ELSA, for example, has been an excellent example of the type of efforts by which we provide tools to implement a more participatory, systematic planning at different institutions. We already have ELSAs, we now need to find ways to implement these strategies and monitor its benefits. And for this, spatial data is essential also.
The ELSA approach can assist in helping us identify these spatial priorities so that we can work to ensure and improve the delivery of services and benefits to our people.
Se debe seguir trabajando en la generación de datos, en aprovechar la información que hoy existe y poder utilizar herramientas y metodologías innovadoras como lo plantea la metodología de ELSA, donde identificamos estas áreas esenciales para la vida y en nuestro caso para la región central estas áreas esenciales para la seguridad hídrica.
Uno de las prioridades es poner justamente esta información científica disponible y no solamente accesible, sino entendible por los tomadores de decisiones, ¿no? La naturaleza es un activo para el desarrollo y esto tiene que ser claro a todos los tomadores de decisiones. Nos permite desarrollo, nos permite reducir riesgos, asegurar los medios de vida de la población. Entonces esto tiene que ser visualizado.
As the focus of many countries begin to turn from COVID-19 crisis to economic rebuilding and recovery, this is an opportune time to ensure that recovery efforts address the looming planetary crisis, including nature loss and climate change.
So have you noticed that each country has a very different challenge and they're applying the map of hope in different ways? Let's see how some other countries are being creative with the map of hope.
Ecuador es un país mega diverso, geográficamente dividido en costa, sierra, Amazonía y el archipiélago de las Islas Galápagos. Ecuador posee más de 91 ecosistemas que son cruciales para albergar su enorme biodiversidad y también la vida y actividad humanas. Actualmente, se estima que un 44% de la población ecuatoriana depende directamente de los bosques para diferentes actividades, como las forestales y agrícolas. Y de manera general, toda la población se beneficia de servicios ambientales ofrecidos por la naturaleza, como la purificación del aire, la provisión de agua y alimentos, o la captura y almacenamiento de carbono para mitigar los efectos del cambio climático, entre otros. Con la finalidad de proteger su naturaleza, Ecuador declaró el 16% de su territorio bajo esquemas de conservación. Sin embargo, a pesar de este y otros notables avances y esfuerzos, aún existen retos ambientales. Por ejemplo, el país tiene una alta incidencia de amenazas climáticas que ponen en riesgo a sus habitantes y a su economía. Según las proyecciones climáticas, se evidencia un incremento del 33% de lluvias en la región costa y un 13% en la región sierra, en comparación al registro promedio de los últimos 50 años. Esto aumenta el riesgo de inundaciones que pueden provocar desastres, pérdidas humanas y materiales. Más aún, cuando potencialmente el área inundable del Ecuador es de más de 40.000 kilómetros cuadrados, es decir, casi el 16% de la superficie nacional, donde habitan 7 millones de personas. Por otra parte, las intensas sequías han llegado a afectar hasta el momento a aproximadamente el 67% del área agrícola del país. Asimismo, por una incorrecta actividad humana entre 1990 y 2014, el país perdió 2,2 millones de hectáreas de bosque natural y con ello biodiversidad, reservas de agua y servicios ambientales. Estos y otros daños a la naturaleza ponen en peligro a la vida humana y a las oportunidades para un desarrollo sostenible en el Ecuador. Por ello, la conservación de la naturaleza es indispensable.
Hola, mi nombre es Bianca Dager y soy viceministra de Ambiente, Agua y Transición Ecológica. Desde el Ministerio trabajamos junto a todos los sectores del Estado en la promoción de soluciones que garanticen el acceso al agua, la protección de los recursos naturales y el derecho a las personas a vivir en un ambiente sano y ecológicamente equilibrado.
Iniciativas como el proyecto de Zonas Esenciales para la Vida, ELSA, ayudará al país a tomar decisiones estratégicas basadas en datos que evidencien posibles acciones de protección, restauración y gestión sostenible de la naturaleza, la cual es esencial para solucionar retos de desarrollo del país.
Soy Matilde Mort, representante del Programa de las Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo en Ecuador. Es de vital importancia para un Estado contar con información actualizada y de primera mano para la toma de decisiones estratégicas. Los datos y mapas del proyecto ELSA serán una herramienta que permitirá al país poner a la naturaleza en el centro de su desarrollo.
Juntos, juntas, tomadores de decisión, sectores privado y público y actores locales. Podremos generar datos y mapas con los que tomar acciones que ayuden a proteger nuestra naturaleza, garantizar el bienestar humano y promover oportunidades de desarrollo.
Costa Rica is a global environmental leader. The country is committed to conserving 60% of its territory, and it has an ambitious plan to decarbonize its economy. We understand that our economy is intrinsically linked to our environmental capital. For example, ecotourism represents about 6.3% of the country's GDP.
I am Jose Vicente Troya, Resident Representative, UNDP Costa Rica. Costa Rica's essential life support areas are critical for coping with climate change, designing sustainable landscapes, and greening our cities.
Costa Rica is located in one of the region's hotspots for future climate impacts. Costa Rica has already suffered substantial damages and losses to human lives, to agriculture, and infrastructure. This trend is likely to increase if we do not strengthen our climate resilience. We are experiencing unchecked urban sprawl. We need to create green spaces for recreation, for urban temperature control, and for ensuring ecosystem services for the city. We are also facing increased intensive monoculture crops, calling into question the balance between the environment and agricultural production. Understanding these challenges and embedding nature-based solutions into national planning will provide Costa Rica with a clear roadmap to address these challenges.
I am Carlos Cordero, Director of the Sectorial Planning Secretary of the Ministry of Environment and Energy in Costa Rica. Using integrated land using planning techniques, we are working to generate a sound national climate adaptation plan that considers nature as ally to tackle climate risks.
We are using spatial data to address different interconnected issues in Costa Rica. We have developed a map of hope using the ELSA methodology with the participation of national policymakers, local communities, and scientists. Now, the Ministry of Environment is making use of the results to produce the 2021 State of Environment report that will measure gaps, challenges, and advances over the past 4 years and set a baseline for upcoming actions on environment.
I am Rafael Monge, Director of the National Center of Geoenvironmental Information at the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica. We are developing the latest State of the Environment report by harnessing the ELSA map results that we help producing using high quality, reliable spatial data.
In addition, the Directorate of Climate Change decided to use ELSA to develop inputs on ecosystem-based adaptation for Costa Rica's National Climate Adaptation Plan. Thanks to its flexibility, we are generating an ELSA processes specifically on climate adaptation. ELSA helps identify areas where ecosystems can help reduce the impact of climate events, such as storm surges, flooding, and landslides, and identifying where nature is vital to secure ecosystem services for the future generations. The ministry is also using the results of our ELSA mapping to support our agro-environment and urban environment agendas by helping to guide the spatial priorities. Using the spatial data that we collected for ELSA, we can identify possible conservation corridors between agricultural units, as well as critical freshwater reservoirs for urban populations. We began mapping essential life support areas in Costa Rica in 2019. After perfecting this process through several iterations and producing maps of hope For specific themes, we are now using the results to inform 4 policy processes. I am Franklin Paniagua, Vice Minister of Environment of Costa Rica. Join us in mapping nature to reduce climate risks, to promote sustainable productive landscapes, to green our urban areas, and keep our cities cool. Join us in mapping nature for life.
Costa Rica elaborará nuevos mapas que estudiarán las principales áreas protegidas del territorio nacional.
Sí, precisamente esto busca reducir el impacto del cambio climático en nuestro país. Costa Rica dio nuevos pasos en el desarrollo de los mapas nacionales que identifican a las áreas principales a proteger, con el fin de aumentar la resiliencia de las personas y la naturaleza ante la amenaza del cambio climático. Los mapas se desarrollan en el marco del proyecto Mapeo de la Naturaleza para las Personas y el Planeta, en una alianza entre el Ministerio de Ambiente y Energía y el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo.
Estos mapas nos ayudan a identificar los sitios donde es más beneficioso implementar acciones basadas en la naturaleza para mejorar la provisión de los servicios ecosistémicos, reducir la vulnerabilidad de las personas ante las amenazas climáticas y mejorar la capacidad de adaptación de los ecosistemas. Esta es la primera vez que se implementa esta metodología bajo un enfoque de adaptación al cambio climático a nivel internacional. Nos sentimos muy orgullosos de este trabajo conjunto que nos está permitiendo desarrollar una herramienta que permite traducir datos en información que puede ayudar a la implementación de políticas públicas en nuestro país.
Según autoridades ambientales, el cambio climático es una de las mayores amenazas para la vida y la economía de Costa Rica. El último informe del Panel Intergubernamental del Cambio Climático es contundente y señala cambios irreversibles a los que tenemos que adaptarnos.
En las montañas de la República Dominicana, la naturaleza provee café y cacao en abundancia, 2 productos estrellas para la exportación y la agricultura de la nación. El desarrollo socioeconómico del país depende de la naturaleza. Las plantaciones de café y cacao contribuyen a la cobertura boscosa, fuentes de agua, fertilidad de los suelos y mejoran la biodiversidad. Además, muchas comunidades rurales dependen de los cultivos de café y cacao y más del 85% de las siembras de cacao se hacen en terrenos de menos de 3 hectáreas. Más de 160,000 personas, desde sembradores hasta trabajadores, se benefician del cultivo del cacao. Su producción es clave para el desarrollo sostenible y el crecimiento económico.
La Gran Agenda 2030 de Desarrollo Sostenible llama a buscar nuevas formas de acelerar el desarrollo sostenible, poniendo, por supuesto, a las personas al centro, pero sin poner nuestro entorno, el planeta, en peligro. República Dominicana cuenta con una biodiversidad abundante, rica, pero a la vez muy frágil. Incluso se dice que la biodiversidad de República Dominicana es uno de los hotspots o puntos calientes del planeta. Hay varias alertas muy recientes sobre este tema. Nuestro último informe de desarrollo humano global prácticamente alerta que si seguimos con el modelo económico actual sin tomar en consideración cómo estamos protegiendo nuestro entorno, nuestra naturaleza, nuestros ecosistemas, estamos poniendo en peligro la misma existencia.
El sector privado dominicano, en alianza con instituciones públicas y la cooperación internacional, está implementando buenas prácticas sostenibles en sus cultivos con el fin de aumentar la productividad y mejorar la calidad de vida de las comunidades. Estas iniciativas impactan positivamente a las comunidades, involucrando a la juventud, empoderando a las mujeres y educando a pequeños productores sobre los retos medioambientales y estrategias para su mitigación.
Desde el inicio somos partidarios de una agricultura agroecológica y biológica que promueve la salud integral del productor y del consumidor. La importancia fundamental de la producción de cacao y café en las partes altas de la montaña significa el resguardo de las aguas que llegan a las ciudades. En el proceso hemos aprendido que proteger nuestros recursos también significa mejorar nuestros ingresos y garantizar nuestro futuro.
Con la metodología ELSA, República Dominicana está mapeando la esperanza y colocando la naturaleza al centro del desarrollo sostenible. El país tendrá acceso a datos espaciales de calidad que podrán fortalecer la protección de los recursos naturales y la biodiversidad, permitiendo identificar la relación intrínseca entre la naturaleza, la producción y el desarrollo humano.
Desde el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente y Recursos Naturales estamos trabajando para fomentar el uso de la información geoespacial. Los datos geoespaciales nos permiten visualizar el territorio, visualizarlo de una manera integral, de una manera de conjunto, por lo que igualmente pues, nos permiten y nos facilitan la toma de decisiones bien informada y oportuna sobre lo que es la gestión de la conservación, pero también lo que es el desarrollo sostenible.
La disponibilidad de estos datos también permitirá aumentar la resiliencia de la comunidad ante los impactos del cambio climático, reconstruir bosques y ecosistemas y aumentar la cobertura de la vegetación.
La República Dominicana tiene una riqueza inmensa en materia biológica, desde un punto de vista global y regional. Por eso, la biodiversidad es fundamental para nuestra economía y los sectores productivos. Desde el Ministerio de Medio Ambiente y Recursos Naturales hemos emprendido un trabajo importante para fortalecer la disponibilidad de datos de nuestros recursos. Esta iniciativa es parte de estos esfuerzos para encaminarnos a una gestión y uso sostenible de la biodiversidad a nivel nacional y alcanzar el cumplimiento de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible. Tenemos la confianza de que esta herramienta será vital para combatir el cambio climático y reforzar el cumplimiento de las leyes que protegen el capital natural nacional de amenazas humanas. Con esta tecnología colocaremos los datos al servicio de nuestro medio ambiente y de las personas, reforzando nuestra capacidad como país de gestionar nuestros recursos a partir de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Les invitamos a unirse, a mapear la esperanza y el futuro del desarrollo para no dejar a nadie atrás.
I hope you're enjoying this little tour of the world I'm taking you on. So what is next when it comes to putting nature at the heart of sustainable development?
Por otro lado, es importante fomentar espacios de socialización de información con el fin de utilizar los datos en la toma de decisiones y sensibilizar a la sociedad y la situación actual de nuestro país en materia de recursos naturales y desarrollo sostenible.
I think that one of the main things we need to be working on right now is on putting these efforts and successes into policies, into action in the territory, into decisions taken in our local governments when they are informed better of what is going on in their territories and they can make better decisions.
We should focus more on scientific data generation. We should know how much we have before we protect, before we restore, before we manage.
A partir, digamos, de la experiencia de ELSA, es, digamos, plantear o generar un conjunto de indicadores a partir de estos datos espaciales y hacer un seguimiento de los mismos a través del tiempo en un contexto de gestión de la información. Pero más adelante de lo que acabo de señalar es utilizar estos indicadores y esta información para hacer una gestión del conocimiento, porque es muy importante para incorporar estos elementos en el desarrollo mismo del país.
Pour l'initiative ELSA, en termes de prochaines étapes, donc il faudrait que les résultats de cette initiative soient traduits en politiques nationaux afin d'orienter les prises de décision en matière de protection de l'environnement, développement durable en Haïti.
Desde PNUD creemos que es clave afianzar el rol de la sociedad civil en el uso de este tipo de datos y herramientas de análisis espacial, vinculando además los resultados desde la materia ambiental con los temas socioeconómicos y ambientales.
Yo concuerdo con que es un proyecto de gran importancia, entre otras cosas porque poder ver y sobre todo poder mostrar a los tomadores y ejecutores de decisiones y de políticas las cosas de una manera gráfica siempre se ha considerado de mucha importancia, tiene mucho mayor impacto que leerlo en un texto.
Я думаю, что вот этот инструмент ELSA, он должен участвовать, принимать участие в планировании, он должен широко применяться в государственных органах, внедряться, потому что инструмент достаточно простой в использовании, и в то же время это большой информационный ресурс, который можно использовать.
Utilizar datos espaciales para modelar nuestro entorno nos ayuda a entender y tener una idea mucho más clara de cómo se interrelacionan las variables ambientales, económicas o sociales.
You have now seen what pilot countries are doing with maps of hope. The UNDP right now is building a system that will allow any country to have their own map of hope. And on that hopeful note, I know I'm very punny, right? I'm going to wrap up this session. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. You can stand up, you can stretch your legs. Yes! Thank you to all the speakers, the contributors, the video editors, the video contributors for making this session so special. Really appreciate you. Take care.